Marshall had this to say. She says, "I know the secret to beat Clarissa Shields. The 27-year-old silent assassin remains the only boxer to have inflicted a ring defeat on U.S. Golden Girl Clarissa Shields." She was quoted as saying, "So far, I'm the only one in the world who knows the secret to beating her. Obviously, I'm not going to disclose what it is. It was under the old scoring system, a point for connecting a punch, and I beat her very clearly. Clarissa has offered many different recollections of the fight. Whatever, I beat her. We've both improved considerably since." She went on to say, "I'll be looking to put everything I've learned over the last 6 months into action, settle into fighting quickly, and produce a good all-around display," predicts Marshall, of her upcoming fight. "I just need to keep active, be involved in more 10-rounders, and acquire experience of fighting before thousands on big shows. By the end of the year, I'd hope to be 10-0 and knocking on the door for a world title, either at super middle or at middle against Clarissa. I intend on unifying the titles at both weights, no particular order, then walking away from boxing with my head held high, no regrets." Now this fight, much like the Raquel Miller fight, is a fight that, in my opinion, makes more sense than Clarissa versus, say, Cecilia Brækhus. That yes, they're both undefeated champions. Yes, they've both accomplished quite a bit. They both represent two of the best and brightest in the sport of women's boxing. But those things aside, accomplishments aside, there's something to be said about the overall size, the discrepancy of it between the fighters in a fight. That Cecilia's a much smaller woman than Clarissa Shields. So, there's that to be addressed. That fight might intrigue a casual who doesn't know any better. But myself, I'm not as intrigued by that fight as I would be to see Clarissa lock horns in the professional ranks against what was her amateur rival, Savannah Marshall. This is a fight that makes more sense to me than a Cecilia Brækhus fight. Now let me preface everything I'm about to say with this. You can't try to forecast an outcome for a fight today based on something that happened so long ago, yesterday, that while Savannah Marshall having beaten Clarissa Shields in the amateurs does set the stage for a fight, you can't use that amateur fight to try to forecast what would happen in a professional fight. You have to look at what qualities and what characteristics both fighters are exhibiting today to try to forecast an outcome on a fight today. You understand? It's about what's going on here and now. So don't overstate the relevance of what was a fight that happened years ago. They were very different people back then. And while that might set the stage for a fight in the professional ranks, that doesn't lend you insight into what could happen in the professional ranks. I'll say, with all those things in mind, that Savannah Marshall actually does exhibit certain qualities, certain characteristics that lend themselves to the notion that she could give Clarissa Shields a problem.
Here today.
Let's talk about the styles of these fighters. Very recently, we saw Clarissa Shields in there with Christina Hammer. Christina Hammer is a pure boxer. Clarissa Shields, at least based on the characteristics, she was a pressure fighter in that fight. That's what she was. Pressure fighters have a stylistic advantage over pure boxers because they have opposing styles. A pure boxer, they want to fight a long-range fight, completely defensively minded kind of fight. They're not prone to combination punching or engaging in aggression. They're trying to fight long range, keeping their opponent at the end of their punches, the far end of their punches, while using lateral movement. They're not prone to mixing it up on the inside. Whereas a pressure fighter, they're all about mid-range to inside. They're going to close that gap, they're going to crowd you, they're going to make you uncomfortable, and in the case of Clarissa Shields, they're going to be very accurate when they do it. So when they get off their combinations, they're going to land, they're going to do damage, and fighting at that pace is particularly taxing on a pure boxer. In that case, it was Christina Hammer. Having a fight at that pace, it's going to wear them out. It's going to get them tired. They're constantly moving around. When they're not moving around, they're getting assaulted with a varying array of combinations. Essentially, Clarissa Shields' style was the kryptonite to Christina Hammer's style. Styles make fights. They really do. But in this situation with Savannah Marshall's not a pure boxer. She's not trying to fight a long-range, slow kind of fight, economic kind of fight.
Like Christina.
Savannah Marshall's a boxer puncher. And it just so happens that boxer punchers have a tactical advantage over who? Pressure fighters. You see, that boxer puncher will mix it up where the pure boxer wouldn't. That as that pressure fighter is approaching that boxer puncher, they'll engage them in that aggression and use the boxing to implement the punching. Whereas the pure boxer, they're like a deer in the headlights in that situation. That they just can't keep up with that kind of aggression because that's not the kind of fight that they want to fight. Whereas the boxer puncher, they can alternate. They can engage in aggression, or they can use the boxing to circumvent the aggression, then deliver aggression of their own. Savannah Marshall just so happens to be just such a fighter.
A boxer puncher.
She's a heavy-handed puncher, and she is not as uncomfortable mid-range to inside as Christina Hammer was. That if you want to do some business in there, she can do some business in there with you. She's not going to dive into a clinch to try to smother your work the way that Christina would. She's going to engage you. You want to punch? She can punch. This is the stylistic advantage that boxer punchers tend to have over pressure fighters. I will say that Clarissa Shields is not your run-of-the-mill pressure fighter. She's nuanced. She's got very fast hands, very good head and upper body movement, very good judgment of distance and spacing. These are not qualities, not characteristics that every pressure fighter has, you understand? That for every pressure fighter, there are physical attributes and nuances, subtleties, that distinguish them as either A-level pressure fighters or B-level pressure fighters. Now, Clarissa Shields has it very much within her capabilities to be an A-level pressure fighter. The kind of pressure fighter that as they're closing the gap, they're simultaneously staying away from the center line, so they're not getting peppered with jabs on their way in. Clarissa Shields, while she may be a pressure fighter, she's not your run-of-the-mill pressure fighter. You gotta wonder how that plays out against Savannah Marshall. You've got to keep those nuances in mind, that while Savannah Marshall might have the right style for the job, at what level is she competing with that style? It's a fascinating fight. It's a sexy fight. It's a fight I want to see. A fight I want to see more than Clarissa Shields versus Cecilia Brækhus because, the discrepancy in size, it's just too great. I don't view that as what could be an even playing field, an even kind of fight, whereas a fight between Clarissa Shields and Savannah Marshall, that's an even fight, okay? There are no discrepancies. That's an even fight.
For many reasons.
Clarissa Shields has already shown that she can take on a very statuesque fighter and dominate her. That fighter being Christina Hammer. Now, Savannah Marshall, well, yes, she's a very statuesque fighter, but she's not as economic as Christina Hammer, you understand? Where Christina Hammer might not want to engage mid-range to inside, Savannah Marshall would. So it's an even fight. Both fighters bring something to the table that offsets something that the other fighter is good at. Those are the best kinds of fights. And given that both fighters have history with each other that dates back to the amateur ranks, the stage is set for a fight like that. That 2 to 3 fights from now, that's a fight that makes a lot of fucking sense. I can't give most girls in the super middleweight division any kind of odds to beat Savannah Marshall. She's dangerous, you understand? And she's only getting better. She's training under Peter Fury. Her power is developing. She's a very statuesque fighter. You may not realize it, but she's a taller drink of water than Christina Hammer, okay? It's a big girl that can punch, big girl that can box, big girl that doesn't shy away from an exchange and goes for the knockout. I think that this is one of the more challenging fights that Clarissa Shields could be confronted with as a professional fighter. And given how competitive Clarissa Shields is, she's not looking for the path of least resistance, and that's what you gotta love about her. That she's not going the easy route. She wants the tough fight. That if you think somebody's a tough fight for me, bring him. I'll fight him. I'll fuck her up. I like that about her. She gets mixed reviews from people. Some people don't like how outspoken she is. As I stated before, if you're gonna make any kind of noise in the sport of women's boxing, then you can't be a fucking wallflower. So I don't even take that away from Clarissa. Do what you gotta do to sell a fucking fight. Long as you get people to watch, I get it. And she delivers. She backs up the talk, which is what's important.
It is.
But yeah, I think this is a great fight, and I think that Clarissa, as competitive as she is, she would relish the opportunity to avenge that loss from the amateur ranks, from those amateur days. I think that she'd jump at the opportunity to fight Savannah Marshall.
And run that back.
Savannah Marshall, who is coming along very nicely. Savannah Marshall, who is training under Peter Fury, and her power is developing. Savannah Marshall, who's one of the most formidable fighters anywhere at super middleweight or middleweight. Okay, she's dangerous. I'd very much like to see that fight. She's going to be back in action very soon. Keep your eyes peeled for Savannah Marshall, who could become a world champion very soon, and give Clarissa a reason to come knocking at her door. In other news, Deontay Wilder had this to say: Joshua wants the fight because the pressure is on him. He was quoted as saying, "I'm hearing a lot of things, but I do have people behind the scenes, and they say Joshua wants it." Wilder told Boomer Esiason and Greg Gaggiani, or whatever the fuck, on WFAN in New York. He's quoted as saying, they say he wants it. No matter, his feelings of fear or whatever. He wants to make the fight happen because the pressure is on him. When you're the fighter, most of the pressure is on you. Like I said, you can be the promoter. You can be the manager and stuff. But you don't never have to enter the ring, not a day in your life. But as a fighter, we don't want that negative energy. That's like we're the one that's holding it up and we don't want the fights.
Now, as tedious and mulled over as this subject has become, the subject of Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua.
Here we go again.
A subject that's mulled over too often, sometimes daily on other channels. As tired as this subject has become, there's something to be addressed in regards to Deontay Wilder's recent comments. Him telling Boomer Esiason that word around the campfire is Joshua wants that fight.
No!
He wants that fight.
Really?
Where his fans might want to believe that Joshua's afraid, that he's, he doesn't really want that fight and this and that. That's not what Deontay Wilder's saying. That's not what your champion is saying. And you guys fall in line to whatever he says. Well, what he's saying is that Anthony Joshua wants that fight. So now what you guys are going to have to do is, bend your knees, lift with your legs, pick up that goalpost and move it somewhere else. Bend reality however you need to so that you can cope with it. Because what your idol, your champion, is saying is that, yeah, Anthony Joshua wants that fight. And he can put his own spin on it. He can say that, he wants it because the pressure's on him. Whatever. The point is that Deontay Wilder's acknowledging that Anthony Joshua wants that fight, so you guys have to acknowledge that as well. Because you guys fall in line with whatever the fuck he says. That's how you've been doing it. Y'all fall in line with whatever he says, whether it makes sense or not. Well, today, at least based on these quotes, in regards to his recent interview with Boomer Esiason,
Joshua want to fight.
Anthony Joshua wants to fight, according to Wilder.
Those are his words.
This fight gets brought up and it turns into a fucking bloodbath. Guys at each other's throats, all out of patience, from having pulled up audio and video and articles and citing their sources in an effort to assign the blame where the blame belongs as far as why the fight hasn't happened yet and why it isn't about to. And in truth, if there are those of you out there that look at Deontay Wilder's punching power and think to yourselves that, yeah, he'll knock out Anthony Joshua, I could care less.
Don't mean shit to me.
That doesn't matter to me. That's who you pick to win a fight. But do understand that no matter who you pick to win a fight,
No matter who.
it won't matter if they don't fight. It won't matter.
It don't.
And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. It's not about the negotiations. It's not about the articles and the videos and the sound bites. It's not about any of that. It's because people want to see the fight get made so that we can reach some catharsis. You understand? So that we can reach a conclusion. You understand? Oftentimes, I'll pull up articles and videos and cite, different sources as far as what's going on from a myriad of news and media. That's why the show is called The Relay, because I'm relaying all that information from different places to you, the subscriber. I'll do this, and I'll get a guy in the comments that says, I still think Wilder knocks Joshua out. Well, that's fan-fucking-tastic, but guess what? He can't knock the guy out if you don't fight him. So what you should be demanding, as a fan of Deontay Wilder, is demand better of your champion. Don't let him get away with giving you an Ortiz rematch when you didn't ask for one. You already beat that guy. Don't let him use Tyson Fury, a rematch with him, as an excuse to delay a Joshua fight. We already know Fury's on the top-ranked side of the street now. That makes negotiating a rematch with him that much harder. You can't put a Joshua fight on the back burner for a Fury rematch and say, well, I want to have that first, when having that fight first could prove to be very difficult. That this set of negotiations for a rematch would be very different from what you guys were doing the first time, because now he's in bed with Top Rank, and Top Rank's in bed with ESPN, and they're gonna want Wilder to cross that street for that fight, okay? So there's an even bigger delay. You can't put Joshua on the back burner for a Fury rematch. You guys know that Top Rank and PBC don't get along, so demand better of your champion, and you tell that guy you can't put the Joshua on the back burner for that fight. That fight's gonna be even harder to negotiate now. And you can't put a Joshua fight for the undisputed heavyweight championship for a Adam Kaunaki. Nothing against him. God bless him. He's a solid fighter. And it's not even a bad fight. But a fight like that at this point in the juncture, that's just poor timing. This is not the time for an Adam Kaunaki fight. This is the time for an Anthony Joshua fight. For those Wilder fans out there who for some reason frequent this channel to regularly complain, what you should be doing is demanding better of your champion. Because he can only get away with this so long as you let him. This 3-fight plan that they've got in mind for Deontay Wilder, it's not a matter of opinion. It's not my opinion that that's what they intend on doing. Shelly fucking Finkel is the one who said that. Wilder's manager, okay? Little bald white guy, Jewish accent from New York. That guy, Wilder's manager. That came from him, okay? So are you guys okay with that, Wilder fans? Are you okay with the substitute fights? It seems like you are. But if you are, then that would then have to mean that you don't really want to see that Joshua fight because you're not demanding better. They mean to give you substitutes. Are you going to take them? Do you want to see the fight or not? You going to fight for this thing or not? That's the bottom line. What do you think, that Ortiz went in the ring post-fight after the Brazil fight? You think he was in the ring for no fucking reason? You think he was just there for no fucking reason? You think Shelly Finkel mentioned him as a potential opponent after Brazil for no fucking reason? Wake up and smell the coffee. You either want to see that thing or you don't. And until you start demanding better, you probably won't. And maybe you're okay with that. Maybe you really don't want to see that fight. But if you don't, stop coming around here talking shit when it's so obvious that it's your guy that's stalling. It's obvious. No matter how you want to spin it. You want to argue all day, watch videos about it all day, maybe make some of your own. All fucking day. But what you won't do, what you don't seem to want to do, is demand better. You want Wilder to knock out Anthony Joshua? He's got to fucking fight him to do it. Otherwise, I don't know how the fuck it's going to happen. So that's what you should be demanding. You really believe in that guy? Then demand better of that guy.